Hello everyone and welcome back. Well, 2042 came out in Game Pass, so I thought I may as well check it out. I'm not breaking the rule I made. Until there are platoons in this game and a server browser, I'll not spend $1. But while setting up the game, I discovered something I found absolutely, well, disgusting really. So bad in fact that, well, before I actually made a 2042 video, I had to make one about these. And that is of course the settings, the default settings for Battlefield 2042, and what a shambles they are. Now before you get the pitchforks out and start criticising me, yes, I'm mainly a tanker, no, I'm not a real demon at infantry. I can handle my own pretty well, but at the end of the day I'm nowhere near the best players. However, being in Deathwish and playing T5s every now and again, I've played with the best players and I've learnt a lot about the way they play, the settings they use and so forth. And let me tell you, the default settings in 2042, they are certainly not set up for someone who wants to get better at first person shooters. So let's jump into the settings and let's have a look at what I mean. Now with the video settings, most games have these default settings, but for goodness sake, if you're going to play multiplayer, you'll want to change them. While field of view is a personal preference, and I know absolute gods who play on letterbox 50 field of views, to be honest, for the average player, myself included out there, you'll want to up it a bit. Somewhere in between probably 70 to 100. With of course the caveat being if you're playing on an old 1080 TV or something, you might want to keep it on the low end of that. Moving on to the next thing, ADS field of view. If there is one setting that all competitive Battlefield 5 players that I know have in common, that is they use ADS field of view on. Basically what ADS field of view is, if you're running a field of view higher than the standard field of view and you're using a one-time sight, when you turn that off you'll see the sight zoom in. And I'll show you a demonstration here. Now the reason they have this off is because A, when you're zooming in you can't really see your peripheral, so you don't know if there's another enemy about to chow you, and B, if you're using a red dot sight you should be fighting at close mid range. And the good thing about when you've got ADS field of view on, your aim has to be very precise. Now this might be a struggle at first, trust me it was for me, but after a while you'll find your tracking aim, your fine motor skills become exceptionally better just by having this on. Now the next two are multiplayer specific. Yes, things like motion blur and film effects, they look fantastic, but at the end of the day we're here to kill people, we're not here for pretty pictures. Motion blur might have been a good way to hide a dodgy choppy frame rate back in the day with old PCs and consoles. But with next gen consoles and whatnot, there's no need to turn it on. Please turn that off. You'll see so much more. Once again, same with the film effects, both of those, turn them off. We don't want our enemies looking fantastic, gritty and all filmy. We want them looking dead, and to do that we want them looking clear before we kill them. So just turn them off. Now when it came to controller settings, I was absolutely shocked. Some of these things are so important, you really must turn them off or as you'll be severely limiting yourself, as well as your potential to improve at the game. I will preface this by saying, your controller sensors, most of the competitive players I know, they run at least 50 cents. There are a few outliers, but higher is better. Just slowly ramp it up, you will get used to the extra sensitivity. Just give it a go. Now don't get me started on zoom snap, I'll go off on a tirade and this video will be 3 hours long of me doing nothing but talking about it and whinging. So actually, shut up, that's enough, no more. Turning it off, yes you're going to be at a disadvantage, but if you really want to get good at first person shooters, you want to be able to nail those headshots. Dying because you missed is just part of the learning experience, and subconsciously every time you die because you've missed that headshot by just a few pixels, you will remember that and your aim will adjust. Hence why I play with zoom snap off. Now the next few things are going to be very complicated, but basically what it all boils down to is you want to build fine motor skills and muscle memory, and the way you do that is through repetition. Pretty much any professional PC player, whether they're playing Overwatch, Apex Legends, Call of Duty, they will spend up to hours each day in an aim trainer, just slowly building your muscle memory. Now the key for your subconscious to learn this is to make sure it's consistent, and these settings here, they are going to absolutely destroy any consistency and severely limit your learning. Let's start off with aim acceleration. Basically what that does is if you peg out your controller thumbstick to one side, it will increase your sensitivity over time, making it go faster and faster. While this may seem like a good idea to do 360s and that, it's not in reality. While during testing I actually didn't find that much of a difference, but the difference I did find was enough to sort of throw me off and make my aim feel a little weird. I still wouldn't recommend having it on. Next up is vertical aim ratio. Basically what that does is assign a separate sensitivity for any movement up and down as opposed to left and right, making up and down movements slower. Once again, this is not good for consistency and certainly isn't good for muscle memory. The first person shooters all have a vertical aspect, and you want your vertical movements to be precise. While it might be possible for your body to learn the two different up and down, left and right sensitivities, it's not recommended. Keeping it as simple as possible is the best and quickest way to learn. Okay, uniform soldier aiming. Oh boy, how the hell do I explain this one and why it's so important? Basically, it tries to keep your sensitivities the same at all zoom levels. Let's do a little demonstration video with it turned on and with it turned off, just so you can know what I mean. So why have it on? It's all about consistency. Consistency that builds muscle memories, so you can snap targets without having to think. Next up is a stick. Oh, for goodness sake, this is my third take trying to say this. Stick Deadzones. So basically the only point of that is for when your controller starts to get old and you start getting stick drift. Although for some reason the default settings are way too high. It's like having a mouse pad a certain size and someone for no reason just cutting half that mouse pad away. That's literally what it is. And especially for a controller, you need every single bit of movement you can to maximise your precision. It may not be so important with your left thumbstick for movement, but it sure is for your right one. You want to turn that down until your controller starts to move on its own, and then turn it up a notch until it stops moving. And that should be the setting you use. Next up, trigger dead zones. You can really increase your fire rate if you lower these all the way down. Otherwise, every time you pull the trigger you have to pull it the whole entire stroke before your weapon will fire. If you lower it to the lower setting, you just look at it and it will fire. Very handy if you like spamming semi-autos. Now last on my shit list is Axial Deadzones. What the fuck are they, you might be thinking? Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, but luckily for you, I did some homework and figured it out. So basically, Axial Deadzone, think vertical aim ratio. So if I move the controller stick all the way to the left and a little bit up, if you have a high axial dead zone, what it will do is it will counteract that tiny bit of up movement and only count the full left movement. Now, if you haven't fallen asleep or got a massive migraine trying to listen to this, it's complicated, I know, but it's important, trust me. Once again, this is really bad if you want to build muscle memory. It's just going to rob you of your potential because you'll never have to learn the tiny little micro movements that are required. And this, as well as vertical aim ratio, when you're controlling recoil, generally it's tiny little downward movements. If you have this on, it's going to cancel it. Your recoil control will be up and down all over the place. So, in conclusion, well, I'm going to have to stick my tinfoil hat on here because this is something I've noticed. Basically, the game doesn't want you to get good. Developers don't want good players out there ruining the servers and killing everyone. They want everyone to be as close together as possible, or mediocre. And that, I think, is why they have these weird settings for new players, because basically it's going to limit how good you can get. From zoom snap to the vertical aim ratios, the field of view that suits players sitting back camping. It's all what I believe to be a deliberate ploy just to sort of try and keep everyone on the same page and stop people from getting overly good. It's business. At the end of the day, let's face it, no one likes getting their ass kicked. I'll wrap it up there. So if anyone's still awake, well, thank you for listening through to the end of the video. Feel free to shit talk me in the comments. I just had to get this out because this is just too stupid to believe. Once again, thanks for everything, and I'll try and get a 2042 video going, but right now I've got no one to play with at the minute because everyone's out on holidays and I'm the only person without a life. Shock.